All right, welcome back to this video series on Taiwanese phonics. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about the tone change rules. So in the last video, we talked about the 7 sounds for 8 tones, and now we're going to talk about how you change those tones according to the tone change rules, or the tone Sandhi system. So I have this chart here, and it looks a little bit complicated, but don't worry, I'm going to go through it and explain exactly how you read it. So what we have here are the 7 tones. Remember that the 6th tone and the 2nd tone are the same effectively. So we don't have the 6th tone on here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. And what you do for the tone change rules is you take the original tone, or the base tone, and that is the written form of the word. So when you see a word written in Taiwanese, you always write it with the base tone. Now to apply the tone change rule and say the correct tone when you're speaking, you're going to follow the arrows on this chart. So if you have a word that starts with the 1st tone, what you're going to do is change that into the 7th tone. And this will be called the changed tone, or the Sandhi tone for that tone. So the 1st tone becomes the 7th tone. So if I have a word like dong, I'm actually going to change it and read it as dong. Next up, the 7th tone is going to change into the 3rd tone. So if I have a 7th tone like dong, when I read it out loud, I'm actually going to say it as dong. And so on for the rest of these. So the 3rd tone will change to the 2nd tone. That means that dong is going to become dong. And the 2nd tone will change to the 1st tone. So dong will become dong. And these 4 here kind of go in a circle. Now for the 5th tone, you'll see that there are 2 directions to go in. You can either go to the 7th tone or to the 3rd tone. I personally go to the 7th tone. That seems to be the more common dialect in Taiwan. Most people will change their 5th tone to a 7th tone, but you may hear some people change it to a 3rd tone. Either way is fine. It's just a slightly different accent in Taiwanese. So if we have the word dong, when it's written with this little accent character over it, then when we read it out loud, we're going to read it as the 7th tone, dong. Now you'll see over here we've got the 4th and 8th tones, and these are split into 2 different kinds. Remember, we've got those 4 stop sounds, the H and the P, T, K. So if we have a 4th or an 8th tone that ends with an H, we're going to go this way. So from the 4th tone ending in an H, we're going to go to the 2nd tone. So if I have a word like the, which we learned before was table, da, then when I change it into the 2nd tone, it's going to sound like the. Next up, if we have the 8th tone, a word like the, then we would change that into the 3rd tone, the. And finally, if there's a P, T, or K at the end instead of an H, what we're going to do is swap the 4th and the 8th tone together. So the 4th tone, if we took the word tok, when we read it out loud, we're going to read it as an 8th tone, tok, and vice versa. So if we had the word tok, we would read that as a 4th tone, tok. So this is the tone Sandhi system, or the tone change rules. You're going to need to sort of memorize this chart. Unfortunately, I do recommend getting a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and copying this down and trying to remember these the rules here on this chart. So you may be asking yourself, why do they have these base tones if they're just applying these tone change rules all the time and changing all the tones? Well, you don't always apply the tone change rules. So you do keep the base tone usually at the end of a sentence or a phrase. I'll cover more of those exact rules of when you keep the base tone and when you change the tone according to the rules. I'll go over that in the next video, but for now, we'll just say that the base tone is going to stay at the end of the sentence, and all the ones that come before that are going to change according to the rules. So I've got some example words here, and these are mostly adjectives. Taiwanese has a lot of adjectives where you just say the same sound twice, and these are really good for practicing these tone change rules, because the second one is going to stay in the base tone, and the ones that come before it, in this case just the first syllable, is going to change according to the rule. So I'll just read through these. We've got a first tone changing to a 7th tone, phang-phang, and that means fragrant or smelling nice. Next up, we've got a 7th tone changing to a 3rd tone, bān-bān, and that means slow. Next up, we have the 3rd tone changing to a 2nd tone, chhàu-chhàu, and that means stinky. It's kind of the opposite of phang-phang, so phang-phang and chhàu-chhàu. Next up, we have h, which means good, and here we've got h. So it's going to change to a 1st tone. And finally, that 5th tone, remember, some people will change it to a 3rd tone. I'm following the more popular rule and changing it to a 7th tone. So we'll read this as you, which means oily. So let's just review these one more time. phang-phang, bān-bān, chhàu-chhàu, h. You. Now we've also got those 4th and 8th tones that end in H, P, T, or K. And don't forget, the H's go in one way and the P, T, and K swap between the 4th and the 8th tone. So refer back to that chart if you need to look at that. So here we've got the 4th tone ending in an H. It would normally be pronounced in the bass tone as K. And in this case, since we've got another one in front of it, we're going to change this to the 2nd tone. So we'll read it as kheh-kheh. And kheh-kheh is what happens to your eyes when you kind of get drowsy and start dozing off to sleep as you're listening to videos about Taiwanese phonics. Your eyes get kheh-kheh. Next up, we've got the 4th tone ending with a P this time. So normally we would read it as siap. And in this case, since it's changing to the 8th tone, we're going to read it together as siap-siap, which means bitter. It could mean a bitter person. It could mean a bitter taste. Siap-siap. And then down here now we have the 8th tone. So again, we've got an 8th tone ending in an H. And so the normal bass tone is going to be a high tone. But in this case, since we are going to change it according to the rule, we're going to drop it down to a 3rd tone. So this will be read as b, which means thin. And finally, we've got the 8th tone, and now it's with a P. And remember, this is the same for P, T, or K. This ends with a P. So the bass tone will be a high tone, jap. And when we read it together, we're going to read it as jap, jap. And jap, jap means frequently or something that happens regularly all the time, something like that. So one good way to remember these 4th and 8th tone change rules is just that they swap from high to low. So the 4th tone is normally low and the 8th tone is normally high and the bass tone. But once we apply the tone change rule, the 4th tones become high and the 8th tones become low. So let's just review all of these one more time. Kheh-kheh. Siap-siap, b, jap. Alright, so that is it for our standard tone change rules. Those tone change rules are the most common ones. There is another set of tone change rules that I'll talk about in a later video, but for now we're just going to stick with this basic set of tone change rules. Now in the next video, I'm going to give you some more practice with that and give you some more tips and tricks for how you know when to actually change the tone. So remember, I said that you keep the bass tone at the end of a sentence. We'll go into a little bit more detail about what exactly that means in the next video. So I hope you found these videos useful. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. And if so, please head down there, hit that like and subscribe button, give me a thumbs up. Let me know how I'm doing. Give me some questions or comments. I'm always happy to get feedback. And thank you so much. I will see you in the next video. 感謝，再會。